Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good Doctor's coverage of The Handmaid's Tale Season 3. I am Dr. Donnelly.
I'm Dr. Hinson.
And we're going to be talking about useful today.
Episode 3.
Episode trace. I'm going to confer with my notes here. Ahem. So there was a couple really key themes in this one. In terms of the plot moving forward, a couple things happened plot-wise. I'm just going to blow through real quick.
Yeah.
One is that we get to meet Serena's mom.
Oh boy.
Which is a really important kind of, I think, understanding of who Serena is and where she came from.
Yeah.
We learn a little bit more about Commander Lawrence, and offline just now, Erin and I had a real good back and forth about what we think might be happening. So we'll tap you into that in a few minutes. June is given some power within that structure regarding Martha's that we'll talk about in a minute. But then another key element is that Eyebrows gets deployed.
To Chicago.
So
he is a commander now. We find out in this episode.
So Eyebrows is a commander, which means that at some point he was more valuable to them than just a driver.
Because he got promoted and then he married Eden, and then Eden was her name, right?
Yeah.
And then she, got in real trouble. So you would think there would be ramifications for him not keeping his household in check, but
no. And you would also possibly think that at this point he would have his own handmaid.
Right.
But instead, they're sending him as a soldier to the front.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening with Nick, but I'm nervous.
What's up with Eyebrows? So anyway, let's return. So we open with June going into a circle of hung Marthas.
Yep.
A great little thing about how they're all being hung for heretics and not resistance, because there is no resistance.
Yeah, there's no resistance. There's no escape. There's no martyrs. And she says, martyrs inspire, heretics are just stupid. So, I mean, the theme of messaging has always been a big deal in Gilead. And I think we're getting a lot more of that this season, of crafting the narrative. And this is all about, power and control, right? And we've talked about that. So, of course, they can't be called martyrs. Of course, they can't be known for leading a resistance, because then other people will find out there's a resistance. And then that sows the seeds of doubt in the establishment. And they can't have that at all.
So then we go somewhere to, I'm going to guess, Cape Cod. That's my guess. To hang out with Serena's mom, who honestly is exactly who I thought she'd be. And Serena's mom invites her prayer circle, which is a really common conservative Christian entity, over to her home to pray for Serena.
Yeah. Backhanded. She didn't tell Serena that's what they're praying for, but Serena finds out.
Also really common within conservative Christian circles. We call it prayer, but really it's gossip. So that happened. And Serena is not coping well.
Bless.
And at one point, it's either at this exact moment or later on, her mother is done with her crying and tells Serena that she is a selfish little girl. And she has to go back to her husband. And Serena says, you don't know what it was like between us. And her mom's pretty much like, bitch, I don't care. Like,
she said, there is no place for you in this world without Fred.
Yeah, the world that you built, Serena. These are choices you made. You are reaping the consequences of choices that you made. I will still maintain that all of the men that built Gilead were just her little hand puppets, Serena's hand puppets. They're executing her vision.
Yeah, but we see the word vision used also to describe Commander Lawrence, which is interesting. June tries to get some intel out of Fred Waterford about what he knows about Commander Lawrence, and he said he is known as a visionary.
So, speaking of Bradley Whitford,
let's talk about Commander Lawrence.
This episode is, I think, entirely about Commander Lawrence and Serena. It's these two parallel, because the title of the episode is useful, and what does useful mean?
Visionaries, but then what does it mean when your kind of esoteric vision is pragmatically enacted?
Absolutely. So Lawrence, we find out that Lawrence does not leave the house for meetings. He's so powerful, he makes all the other commanders come to him, which I adore.
What did he say? Like, I never liked commuting or something.
And if somebody told me that line was improv, I'd believe it.
I'm here for Bradley Whitford's snark, forever and always.
Just for always. If you guys have not seen the movie Cabin in the Woods, by the way, his performance in that is utterly fantastic. Please Please enjoy him and Richard Jenkins in that movie.
So good.
So I kept writing, what game is Lawrence playing? Is he being cruel? Is he doing a larger purpose? What is he doing? And when I see the whole episode, I think what he was trying to do is entirely mess with June.
Oh, 100%.
And but it's intentional. Like and no one else in the room knows what he's doing except for Waterford, who is also pissed.
Yeah.
But as he takes June through this journey of the episode, I think really what he's at one point he takes her to a Martha detention center and he tells her that she gets to choose the 5 available slots. And she's like, no, just free everybody. And he's like, that is not how it works. You selfish child.
Can't do that.
I got 5 spots. This is what you can do.
5 openings.
I have 5 openings, so you pick them. And she's like, I will not do that. I will not do that. And like at this point, I had to pause the show and walk around because fundamentally, I'm a pragmatic person. And like, if you can't burn it all down, do what you can. Like,
and she gets there eventually.
She just took a little bit too long, but I think she gets there because he messed with her to get there.
Yeah, and he calls her out for what she was trying to do, and even who she was. He knows a lot about her. Yeah. So he uses that against her in the meeting with all the other commanders and talks about her being a book editor and that she wasn't contributing to society. And he compares her to Mrs. Putnam, I think, for like what you were doing in the past.
Mrs. Mackenzie, I think it was. It was Mrs. Mackenzie.
Mrs. Mackenzie, you're right, Mrs. Mackenzie. We haven't gotten to
like she helped people. What did you do? You edited books no one wanted to read.
Yeah, you edited books and, calls her out on her how she behaves in Gilead, and he says to her, how could they not realize how transactional you are? Yeah. Which is like fundamental to who June is, right? She is always wants something for something else.
Yep.
And
it's her agenda or no agenda.
And it's her interpretation of the resistance. It's her interpretation of rebellion. It's on her terms. And he is trying to show her that Gilead is so much bigger than what she thinks her terms are. And I think that's why he takes her to the detention center and shows her
is so much more ambiguous than she thinks it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that you can't just steamroll your way through all of these relationships. And so as he kind of niggles at her this whole time, and he's, great phrase, he says, how tempting is it to invent a humanity in people? And she's doing that all the time. She does that every time she decides she's going to trust Waterford or trust Serena or, trust Commander Lawrence really early on without having any proof of who he is. So that was all really, really interesting to then get us eventually to the end where she does choose.
Yeah.
And she chooses for the resistance, which was great.
And as she writes people, and she's done this throughout the entire time, she does it for better and for worse. She either makes them better people or she makes them worse people. Mm-hmm. But she is the ultimate arbiter of people's usefulness.
Yeah.
And Lawrence is like, no, you're not. You're a child. And if you want to play the big boy game, let's play. But we got some lessons to learn. So I wrote a couple times that he's forcing June to embrace moral ambiguity. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking of the line from Hamilton where Hamilton raps at Jefferson, welcome to the present, we're running a real nation. That was a real nice declaration, but welcome to the present, we're running a real nation. I think that's what Lawrence is trying to tell her. Like, you want to go this thing, you have to play the game to win the game. You can't just rewrite the rules.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing Serena grapple with.
Yeah.
And Lawrence grapple with as well. That like, you can have all of these ideas, but what does it look like when these ideas are enacted and you're forced to participate in this system? And there's always been this push and pull with June as she pushes back so far against Gilead, but fundamentally she has to survive. And so then we see her capitulating again to the system and participating it and furthering it forward, even by choosing these Marthas.
Yeah.
She has made this decision. And she, I think, interesting to what you just said too, she doesn't see herself as a part of the system. Mm-hmm. And what Lawrence is trying to show her is that she is.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I won't feel guilty. These deaths won't be on me. These deaths will be on you for first,
making me
in the first place. And she's not wrong. Like, she's not wrong. The ultimate guilt for the deaths of those women getting sent to the colonies lies in the people who constructed the system. But she is a part of it, and she is a cog in that wheel, to reference Game of Thrones again. And she needs to recognize that.
Yeah.
And she gets there by the end. And this whole idea, this theme throughout the episode of choice and having agency and having power and what that means. And we talked about the freedom to and freedom from concepts of Gilead.
Yeah.
Referenced again when June says, Aunt Lydia always said we were a society dying of too much choice.
Yeah.
So it was really, really interesting that then in the end, she is given this choice and given this power and agency by Lawrence. To what end?
We don't know.
And she decides to the end of eventually manipulating and controlling the men.
Yeah.
We know their worst nightmares, and with a bit of practice, that's what will become their nightmares.
So before we end, I want to go back to her mom.
Yes, please do.
So a couple things. I had a little bit of a difficult time kind of putting her mom in a box until the second time we met her, where she said, you gave away a baby that wasn't even yours.
Yeah.
And what I wonder at this point then is so I'm just going to extrapolate and say that this is true, whether it is or not. So I think that Serena's mother is of the generation that believes that they did nothing to contribute to the fact that there weren't babies. And that true motherhood still has to be that you birthed a thing. Oh. And that there's always been a divide in the theology between Serena and her mother. Because Serena invented this theological framework that they're all living in.
Yeah.
The mother has always thought it was a lie because something is wrong with Serena, that Serena couldn't have a child. Because that's very common in the theology that her mother seems to handle.
Yeah.
And so therefore her mother is trying to destroy her theology, Serena's theology, but she's doing it to bring her towards this version of conservatism. The problem with doing that is that it's very difficult to move somebody from one version of conservatism to a parallel version of conservatism. Or a parallel version of liberalism. If you're going to destroy something, they're going to move up or down the ladder. They're going to move on the spectrum. They're not going to move laterally. And so if she wants Serena to believe that she's not a real mother, then Serena either has to completely destroy Gilead and find hot Canadian guy again from last season and defect, or she has to become a handmaid. Or she has to become a Martha. There's not a middle ground the way her mother is acting like there is. And so her mother participates in Gilead. We see the prayer circle. They're all in the right clothes. But none of them are in the power structures. They're out in Cape Cod. They're living, we have never seen another prayer circle in Gilead this way. This is clearly a hangover from the old faith. They even quote some very specific scripture. They talk about Psalm 62. And Serena is clearly expected to memorize that. Well, clearly in Gilead, she wouldn't have memorized any scripture whatsoever. She wouldn't have been taught scripture.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. That's really interesting. The priest or the pastor prompts her to repeat
Psalm 62.
Psalm 62, which she's not supposed to know.
That she's not allowed to know.
Yeah.
And so this is Serena's past that her mother's trying to drag her back into.
Mm.
Which I think is eventually what we kind of see is that's what Serena is really wrestling with, I think, right now in this moment of the show is, did the system I built, did this system that I'm so sure of, was it true?
Right.
Is what June telling me true? Or is what my mother telling me true? Because they are three competing ideologies.
Yeah.
And this moment of the show, June is probably bringing her the most comfort because June's telling her that she's a mother. If she believes June's version of humanity, then she's got to believe it all.
Yeah, and she says only a mother, because she tells her when they meet, only a mother could do what you did.
But both Gilead can let her be a mother, but not a mother that gave away her child.
Right.
And her conservatism she was raised with can't let her be a mother.
Right.
So she's going to shove herself into. We all know she's not going to shove herself into the June box because this is We have 13 more episodes of this.
This is Serena. This is Serena Waterford we're talking about, and she only ever goes so far.
And she only ever goes so far. And additionally, just some logic of television tells us that we have 11 more episodes this season. And if Serena defects, there's not really a show. So anyway, so we know she's not going to choose June's. But the question is going to be, is she going to choose her mother's or is she going to choose Gilead? And I think she's going to choose Gilead, but like how long and in what way and what detours do we take before she chooses Gilead is going to be really interesting.
We don't know. Yeah, but she's clearly facing this
massive existential theological crisis.
Moral theological crisis.
And I can tell you, as somebody who was raised very not at all as conservative as she was, not even close. But when you're raised in a faith system of any kind, even if it's a non-deity focused faith system where everything is very brick wall and very logical, and this is how things happen, and this is the right way, and it is incredibly comforting in the moment because you don't have to make choices. You don't have to think conceptually. You don't have to wrestle with things. But then like 2 or 3 times that life hammers that wall, everything crumbles and you're lost.
Yeah,
and that's what she's doing right now. And it's real painful to do by yourself, especially when you're missing a finger.
Yeah. And your husband is a complete and utter voistoid. And June's vision of the world, right, is the messiest. It's the most complicated. It's the one in which she gets to be a mother for caring for Nicole and for making the sacrifice that she did. So also, in a way, her most authentic version of herself. But it's also real complicated.
It's the one that loses her identity.
And it's the one that loses her the structure that she built.
Yep. And she can't, and I will bet you $5 that she cannot do that.
And it's fascinating because I think the show wants us to see the potential in Serena.
Oh yeah, and they've done that work. I do. I mean, Yvonne Strahovski's done that work for me.
To be insurgent in some way.
Yeah.
But how many attacks does she have to go through? How many times does that brick wall get knocked down and she builds it back up that it stays back down, you know? So we don't know what her line in the sand is. Right now they're all telling us her line in the sand is Nicole, but they're also starting to tell us that maybe it's not.
It's not, or it's not Nicole in the way we think it is. And again, if they had come out and said season 3 is the last season, our conversation would be different right now.
Right, but we don't know.
We don't know. And if it is,
we don't know.
That's cool. But I think if this was the last season, they would have told us that. If they know. If narratively this is where it ends, no. Yeah. Hulu is making money hand over fist on this thing. And a network is always going to choose money over narrative, which is why so many of us are furious still with things like and Game in America.
In America, they're always going to choose money over narrative.
They're always going to choose money over narrative, which is why we can do this conversation forever, but that's always has to be in the back of our mind when we're analyzing these characters' choices this season, is that the writers may not have any more ideas after this. And so they're going to have to keep jerking us back.
Yeah.
Because Hulu hasn't given them an end date yet.
We don't know. Without the structure, it's hard to hypothesize where these narrative arcs and character arcs are going. But it was a really, really interesting couple of themes and ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
And definitely, for me, but the best of the first 3 episodes that they all launched at the first time got into a lot of meatier stuff. Because the first 2 episodes, in fairness, had to be
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Reminding us what happened and kind of developing things. But this one, I think we're starting to get into the meat of what we're going to be talking about in season 3. And it's really troubling and interesting. And so
I'm here for it.
We'll see where it goes from here. But yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be furious dramaturgically forever because they're not providing me the structure that I want. This is why I believe in books and musicals that have end dates. But I love it. It's easily the most interesting narrative on television right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, especially with a lot of parallels and overlaps to what's going on in contemporary societies around the world and the treatment of women and the treatment of asylum seekers and the treatment of incarcerated persons and all of these kinds of themes that we can draw experiences to and see parallels with. It's really gripping.
Indeed it is.
Right.
And on that note,
yes,
that's us, y'all.
Yeah, we've got it. That was episode 3. We'll be back for episode 4 as soon as possible. I know we've got, as of filming this right now, there are 6 episodes live. So we're going to attempt to get through those as quickly as possible so that we can get y'all caught up with us and we can be caught up with the show.
The goal is for that to happen on July 3rd. So, and then that means that we would post July 3rd's episode on the following Monday, and that will be our schedule.
Yes, ma'am. But for
Just
now,
let everybody know.
As always, we remain the good doctors. We wish you a Gilead free day, and whatever that means for you.
I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And we will see you all next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.